Savvy Business Radio, drawing out the best from our guests with our host, Christina Nichman.
Our guest today is Richard Brooks. Richard has worked in the financial services industry where he was lead manager of $325 million in assets. His business savvy led him to form his own company, RNB WEALTH MANAGEMent GROUP, an independent investment advisory firm. Today he shares his top tips and strategies on how to build your investment portfolio. Find out more about Richard Brooks and his latest book, Counter Investing, A Winning Approach to Life and Finance, at rnbwealth.com. Hi, Richard. Welcome to Savvy Business Radio. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thanks, Christina, and thanks for having me.
Oh, my gosh, you betcha. I mean, you're talking about one of the subjects that we get the most requests to talk about, and that is finance and money. As business owner, any business owner, if you want to succeed, you have to be bringing in finances, money. And in our personal lives, we all like to be financially successful. We all want to not be at the end of our retirement, not doing well, going, I have to live off my Social Security and I'm struggling here. We want to do well financially in all aspects of life. And you're going to help people do that. But before we go to share all of your wonderful tips and strategies, share with our audience a little bit about your background, what brought you to the wonderful world of wealth management and finances.
Well, thanks for asking that question. It's a bit of a journey to get there. I'm the creator of a system called Counter Investing, and the owner of RNB WEALTH MANAGEMent GROUP. We function solely around the counter investing system. That is the core of everything we do. And the reason it was important for us to do that is in my 20 plus years working for banks and larger institutions, and for this latter part of that period working in my own firm, something that occurred to me, money is good and more of it tends to be better than less. And it also, something that occurred to me, Christina, is that it affects our families, the amount of money we have, and the general sense of security and well-being that all of the investing public, I imagine people listening to your show, that they'll have. So doing it in a better way seemed like it was really a good idea for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you learned yourself how to be a better investor and be better with your money, and now you help others do the same. Explain for people, because I think there's a misunderstanding about what investing is and how to go about it. Some people think it's only the stock market, or it's maybe investing in real estate. What have you found is some of the best ways that people can begin to invest?
That's a great question. And some of the old adages that are floating around out there in the universe seem to come to mind rather quickly. People say that it's better to buy low and sell high, and it's better to have less cost, and it's better. I mean, there are all these things that sound really terrific. But one of the things I think that's missing in that formula is buying low and selling high, and buying something at a lower price may be great if you're buying something at a lower price that's worth holding. And it's always good to have someone, I think, with their finger on the button of your portfolio, as long as they're loaded with your hopes, wishes, and dreams for what it is you want to have happen with your money, so that they can kind of execute against that plan in the best way possible. And that's where counter investing really was born.
How does someone decide who's a good investor, who has their best interests in hand, and who might not? How do you even begin to decipher that and where to look? Well,
that's a great point. Mostly what we've found is we're almost entirely a referral firm. We've most of our clients either know one another professionally or personally, and have referred people to us over a period of time. And they've begun by trying our system with us and seeing about their performance results. And most important, when I say performance results, Christina, is how those results match with their lives. Because beating the S&P or the Dow is terrific, but if it doesn't match concurrently with the goals you have for your personal life at that particular times in which you had hoped it would happen, then it doesn't really matter much, does it? I mean, if you're up or down and you happen to have other things going on, it would be really much better for you. I think most all would agree if those things kind of happen concurrently. They happen together.
Yeah. And what is your perspective on what is like the biggest myth for people out there when it comes to investing and just being good with their money? What have you found working with people and their finances?
Well, that's a great question too. Well, you're just filled with great questions, Christina. I guess that's why you have a successful show. So you're welcome. One of the things that is a pretty popular myth, I guess, that I've had to kind of work with for years is I'm not an enormous fan of these large financial institutions or banks in the traditional sense that they've always kind of had a control or a chokehold on our industry. That said, I feel that they do serve a purpose, and they do help people who don't have the means to have individual or private wealth management people, that they can't afford to pay them to maybe do more custom work with their portfolios and so forth. And those banks and those institutions serve a purpose. I think they're really well suited for that. I think that their assets are highly visible. They have lots of fees and expenses, but it's easy to see where point A and point B are going, if it's up or down or what you paid for it. And I think that's something that serves a purpose. It may not be directly germane to the folks that we work with or what we do on a more personal level, but it does serve a purpose. So that's a myth that I've encountered over the 2 decades.
And when someone comes into your office or into your establishment, how do you begin to work with them to establish the best financial portfolio? How does it work when they walk in? What does it look like?
Well, that's great. When we first meet, usually the first thing that we have to do together is to get to know one another in as efficient way as possible. And that usually comes from having a pretty good dialogue. And that means that we ask some questions and then we shut up a little bit and we listen to what they have to say. And I think that's part of the process that maybe the second myth that you referred to earlier, that not a lot of the bigger institutions really want to do a lot of listening. They have a formula, they have a mold they want to pour money into. And after they listen to you, they're going to say thank you and pour it into that mold. You just have to hope it's the right mold for you. Yeah. We don't work that way. We never have. We've always listened to what people say, try to find which portion of the portfolios will be applicable to what it is that they just told us they want to have happen. And then if there's any other aspects of the investment world that pertain to what it is that the folks said they would like to have happen, we get after it and we try to make those things part of their portfolio as well.
I love that you mentioned that. So many business owners and so many businesses have come to me and said, hey, I have this program, it's not really selling. And you begin to realize, or they begin to realize that, hey, I've created a program that I think is a one-size-fits-all, and it's really not working because not everyone's the same. Just like going to the doctor, if you have an illness, you might have the same diagnosis as someone else, but the doctor sometimes, based on who you are as a person, how your body accepts things, they have to create a different plan of action to kind of attack that illness or disease or diagnosis. So go on.
No, I didn't want to interrupt. That's such a wonderful point, because using a doctor as an example, how many people in your listenership, I wonder, have gone to a doctor, had a general treatment or diagnosis, and then gotten a wonderful follow-up call from the doctor, and they said, wow, that was really great. The doctor took the time to see how I was feeling. That doesn't happen a lot these days, but I'll tell you what, it happens with us every single day. And
that's awesome.
One of the things that I insisted on when I kind of brought together this boutique style of management in the counter investing system is there are no excuses and there's no rest ever, period. It's real simple. We don't believe in it, and anybody who works with us has to agree with that philosophy or it's not a good fit. So one of the earlier examples I had that sticks with me that supports what I'm saying to you is there was a gentleman who came to our firm a few years back and said something to me that really resonated and stuck with me. And I've quoted him often. He said that he heard from me more in the first month than he's spoken to his wife in the last couple of months. And it really gave me pause. I said, I don't know, I guess that's a compliment, but maybe we should talk about what's going on at home. And he assured me, no, it's coming. And today he's one of our largest and most enthusiastic supporters.
Wow.
And an international businessman of some acclaim. And he's really helped validate what it is I'm saying to you.
Yeah, and I agree. That's missing from a lot of businesses is really getting a touch point on where are your clients and how can you really best serve them, because one size does not fit everyone. Regardless of what business you're in and what you're serving them with, you got to look at it from each individual standpoint and how can you individually help them. And for you, you mentioned counter investing. What does that mean when you say counter investing?
That's great. Thanks for asking. So what it means simply is that we do, more often than not, something that is in a little bit different direction in a different way than the larger financial institutions or more, I hate to use the expression cookie cutter, but more formula and mold oriented type operations would do. And that's really across the board, Christina. That's in the types of investments, the quantities of those investments, and the cost of those investments. One of the earlier successes we had was delving into the world of alternative investments when they became widely available years ago. 8, 9, 10 comes to mind. And we started to explore that arena as early as possible and do exhaustive research on each of the opportunities. And one of the things that occurred to me is, in keeping with our formula, we wanted it to be as low cost and low impact to our clients as possible. So where the bigger, more commercialized firms were charging very large percentage fees to participate in that, if that was a fit for their clients, we operated in those arenas at less than half of those upfront costs. And yes, it really was not fantastic for us in the beginning that way, but the result to our clients was tremendous and resulted, 5, 6 times over in more assets coming in and people increasing their support of what we're doing.
Wow. I love that you mentioned that, Richard, because I think when it comes to anything life that you're building that's great, whether it's business or investing, it's not something that happens in one day, but it's something that over time builds and grows. And like a great business, like they say, Rome wasn't built overnight. Neither is great business, and neither is investing. So sticking with it and realizing that, hey, if I stick with this plan, over time, we're going to see great results. Is that what you found?
Yes, and you're entirely right. A comedian comes to mind. Steve Martin once said something, forgive me for paraphrasing and showing my age, but I think in his earlier days doing stand-up, he said, he was surprised to hear that the Mona Lisa wasn't painted like with one brushstroke. And, I thought that was clever, but, it takes a while to chip away at something and make it work. And some of our largest relationships in our business started with much smaller relationships, as they not only were testing the waters to see what this style of management would do for them, because obviously everybody's heard a promise from a doctor, a car mechanic, or a financial representative. We didn't promise anything but hard work, and we would try to deliver what it is that we said we were going to deliver, and we've done that. Yeah. Something I'll also say to you, Christina, if you don't mind me adding. Everybody has a story. You said to me earlier, I think maybe even before we just came on the air, and it was an interesting thing, and I have thought about that quite a lot. Most people have some sort of stripes that they wear, whether they were active in military or public service in some other way. Most people have earned their stripes, so to speak, in one way or another before they get to where they are. I've earned mine in a little bit, not surprising, unorthodox way, and thus the book. I've survived more than a few near catastrophic injuries, and during the period where I was going through those, I kept my firm growing and alive, as well as myself, and it just kept getting back up, even though I kept getting more than knocked down. Knocked down is an understatement, and I can give you a summary of those if you want, but I try to stay away from the gore. But I touch on them in the book, and the book is interesting, I guess, in another aspect, because what it is, it's basically two tales interwoven. It's the tale of a guy who just wouldn't lay down, which is me, and the tale of a dream of a business and the ideas that we've just discussed, you and I, in the last 15 minutes, and how those two things really fed off of each other. That spirit of never really wanting to quit or lay down for more time than I had to really speaks and goes hand in hand with the idea of how do you invent a system of cutting out the middleman as much as possible in the finance industry and being an independent financial advisory firm and really just specializing on bringing point A to point B from the market to the client with as little hands in their pockets as possible. Yeah. I mean, sure we want to be paid. We're not martyrs, but we would like to be paid something that's fair so we can wake up in the morning and feel good about what we're doing, and clients can do the same.
Yeah. And I love the story. Ava shared it with me, and I thought, wow, how many people have found that whether they're creating anything in life, whether they're going to get a degree or going to start a business, where something will happen, and inevitably it always does. When you start any endeavor, it seems like everything tries to get in the way. But you can either sit there as a victim and say, oh, woe is me, and let it slide, and then just live an unhappy life. One where at the end of it, you're like, all this regret, or you can just plow forward and say, this is just going to make me stronger. And one thing brings clear for me, Richard, many years ago, my uncle, I didn't realize this. I had just started flying lessons. We talked about how I like flying before the interview. Well, I had no idea. My uncle was so quiet, always never shared much about himself, but he was on his deathbed and he told me that he regretted never learning to fly. And now he was never going to get the chance. He was days from dying. And I thought to myself, I don't want to be that. I don't want that to happen to me. And so I'm hoping with people listening into you today, share a little bit about what you went through, because it was you went through some major injuries. You had 2 strokes, an automobile accident that had vertebrae issues. I mean, that is huge. And you, with all of that, still created a successful business. Share a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, thanks for asking. That was an incredible story about, I think you said your uncle, right? That was, that's something. So you're carrying the mantle, picking up, I guess, carrying the torch for, making sure those dreams are realized, that you had, much in the same way I think that I'm doing in a different way. It's not often, I guess, that in my latter years that I've had someone say to me, that they've met someone who's broken their neck twice and had 3 strokes, by the way, not 2. I earned that third one. And there were a bunch of other things that were thrown into the mix during all that made it even more interesting, I guess. And at the same time, working off of laptops and at that time, I guess, Blackberries and whatever we had, phones, and talking to my offices from hospital beds, which, by the way, nurses really frown upon, would have been good information for me to have before there. But I've had more than one phone thrown in a toilet and been told, that I need to stop messing with work and rest. But anyway, given that I don't really lay down or stop too much or too often, at the culmination of the last injury, it kind of occurred to me, mostly at the insistence of a small group of my closest friends and advisors, my own personal advisors, that I really ought to write this stuff down, because I've got 2 kids, and wouldn't it be great to leave them a legacy? Because they kind of figured I was going to, be taken out of the game of life any moment now, so I should write it down and have that for them. Yeah. But really what was born is a written kind of an infrastructure of describing everything that you and I have talked about, I guess, now for the last little bit. Yeah. And it gave birth to the counter-investing structure in a more organized way. Mm-hmm. And it really helped me define not only myself in writing, but I guess the things that I stand for. So when people say, how did you keep getting knocked down and fall off a big mountain in Alaska and break your neck a second time, and yet you still get to come back? I said, well, I guess I did that, and I'm pretty happy, and I thank the doctors and Lord knows the medical people who put me back together again like Humpty Dumpty. But the thing is, I also lowered fees to my clients during that period and tried to do things that I thought were kind of, in a way, thanking them for their loyalty and staying with me, because people are funny about money, Christina. They really, they really are funny about money, and I say that in the broadest way possible. Well, right. So when they have a lot of it, they're really upset about the fact that their guru of wealth management got himself laid up in an ICU with tubes coming out of him, and what's going to happen with my money is usually the first thought. Yeah, sure. They probably also wonder and wish me well, but they really kind of want to know what's going on. So we somehow navigated that, and I lowered fees, and we kept things going. And at a time when anything but that would have been in my best interest, and I feel good about it. I mean, those people are still with me, and I'm enjoying, thank God, a very healthy existence. Still working out 6 days a week, and I don't run as fast as I used to, but I still go, and that's all that matters.
Yeah. You're so right about that. And it's interesting because at your most difficult time, things will come up that you don't plan in life, but you just got to roll with the punches. And things will even come up in your business that's maybe not even health related. A number of years ago, we had a couple of advertisers that signed up to do business with us. And by no fault of us, our entire server that we have just crashed. And they were very upset. For about a day and a half, their ads were not getting out because our website was not working. And they called me up really kind of ticked. And I said, okay, what can we do to make you happy? I understand you're upset. I didn't make excuses because, hey, stuff happens. I'm not going to make an excuse. What can we do to fix this for you? And what they ended up accepting was a number of new advertisements at a different time slot that would work best for them. And of course, we asked for no extra money, and they were extremely happy and referred other clients to us. So sometimes it's not a matter of, just saying, okay, this is awful and trying to explain it to them, make excuses. It's like stuff will come up, do your best, and then just roll with the punches and do what you can.
Right. It's a great philosophy. I'm glad we share that. We seem to be pretty much aligned, you and I.
You betcha. Yeah, we are.
It's great. There's not a lot of people out there in this, maybe in this industry or yours as well, that subscribe to that plan, but that doesn't matter. The ones that do subscribe to it really appreciate it when we cross paths, and that's kind of where we live, and I guess you do too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because really what it is, and someone said this to me about sales and business, is that when people come for your product or service, they don't care about you personally. It's not personal. They really just care about what they need or want and desire. And if you're there to fulfill it for them, great. But if they feel something's jeopardizing that, it gets a little hairy. So we're just here to help you feel that we still got your back. We're going to help you. It's all good. And you did that. And that's fabulous. Now, I want to ask you a personal question about investing because I'm curious. I've heard so many people say that when it comes to growing your portfolio, that it's a great idea to buy a house, to have that as, collateral later on, that, this land or house. How do you feel about buying a house? Maybe you don't have all the money in the world and a good portion of the mortgage is through the bank. Do you feel owning a house is a good investment? What's your take?
So that's a great question. And I guess, again, I'll show that I'm in my 50s versus my 20s, which probably comes through with all the accidents I outlined before. If one is out there doing the math and one is figured, I can't be 20 years old, I would have had to start those accidents when I was born. So just before I answer that, something you said a moment ago, really, I just want to I don't want to digress, but I want to just add it so I don't forget it. We have a saying around my firm that I kind of like to harp on, that investing is not an emotional endeavor, but that doesn't mean that you invest without heart. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of leading me, in my mind, to bridging to that next question you asked about a house. Mm-hmm. I think houses are great. I own one. I think people should have one. And if that fits with their lifestyle, which has been somewhat of a decreasing quantity of folks in the more recent generations, mm-hmm. since they're more mobile and they don't want to be tied to the large asset or the debt that goes with it. It seems that most of the younger folks today are scooting around a bit and want to have smaller and less and more rental and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But for the other percentage of folks who like the idea of having a place to regularly hang their hat or paint or whatever it is that they need to do, endlessly fix up, I think it's a great asset. And it's whether or not I would use it as collateral later is probably another conversation that also gets back to my broader position, which is not to discuss stocks or investments in a specific way at cocktail parties, or I guess on radio shows, because you don't know who you're talking to, you don't know how relevant it is, and you don't know anything about this situation. So giving them blind advice, I think, is silly. I mean, just for me anyway. I mean, there are people that probably want to do that, but not me. So when it comes to the house, it's somewhat the same. I mean, you have to have that first conversation you asked me earlier, which I thought was a great question. What do we do when we meet people? And we have that first conversation, and that would be part of it. In asking the right questions, and not all of them are necessarily comfortable questions, and not all of them are comfortably answered. I mean, people sometimes answer to the extent they're comfortable. And then over time, they'll share more and more, and you'll get to know one another better. But the truth is, until you know the answers to those questions, until you know the fullness of someone's life, buying a house, taking loans, buying stocks or bonds or cash or alternative investments are all academic conversations that come later.
Yes. Oh my, I'm so glad you framed it in that way. It goes back to our original point that not one size fits all. It depends on where you are in life. What are your overall goals? Where do you want to be in 10 years, 20 years? Now, where are you? Where's your starting point? I think enough of us don't even know where we are and where we really want to be in any amount of time, either in 5 years, 10 years, or, in 20 years. So yeah, absolutely. I get where you're totally coming from. Now, I don't want us to leave here without everyone finding out where they can find out more about you and Counter Investing, a winning approach to life and finances. That's your book. Where can they get that?
On Amazon, a little company maybe y'all have heard of.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, so if you just put in Counter Investing, I'm pretty sure somehow you'll come to us. And the reason that the book isn't less money is because I insisted on it being printed in color, and I had a big argument with the folks that we talked about earlier in wanting to put it out at a lower price, but keeping it in line with everything you and I have just talked about. You can probably imagine what's coming. I wanted to do it in the way I thought was the best representation. We make almost $0 off of it, in case anybody cares. But it did make bestseller status, and we're pretty proud of getting the story out. And it is in color, so the pictures are pretty neat. And I hope you all like it.
I know they will. They absolutely will. And it's going to help a lot of people out there. And you have a website they can visit as well?
We do. Thanks for asking. It's rnbwealth.com. That's RNB, Romeo, November, Bravo, rnbwealth.com.
Ooh, thanks for the aviation acronyms there.
I wish, just to reflect quickly on my hard flying experience and when I was trying to learn your incredible passion of flying. In those first few hours, I realized one of my great stumbling blocks was not being able to understand the darn words the tower was saying. You're supposed to be able to understand them. And I just kept going saying, what? Huh? What? Huh? So that was my first clue. That probably wasn't going to be for me.
And like everything, it does take time. It's a language. I think every industry has their own lingo, as finances and wealth and industry does as well. But it's interesting. Once you get in the lingo, when you first hear it on the ATC, air traffic control, you're like, whoa, are they speaking Greek or what?
Just when I thought, Christina, you had made enough good points to fill a show, you hit another one out of the park. And that's a great point. If I just take a second, in the last minutes that we've spoken, you'll probably recall that there wasn't an acronym or a sophisticated investing term used, and that's not by accident. We don't really feel like trying to impress our clients with a few fancy charts or things that you can print pretty much by yourselves at home, given the software today, or use acronyms that they can pluck from the journal. I just don't think that really isn't fitting with a natural dialogue between people about their money.
Yeah.
And there are people who disagree with me. That's fine. I mean, everybody's entitled to their opinion, I guess, but we really think that it should be simple. And I guess there was a famous playwright in New York, Belasco. He had the Belasco Theater. There was a quote that I had, I still have on my office wall. I've had it for many, many years. And it basically ends as, if your idea can't fit on the back of my business card, then you don't have a clear idea. And I thought that was brilliant. And that came out, I don't know how long ago, but David Belasco is long past, I think, from current topic. And so you can imagine that quote was probably pretty old. But I like it, and it resonates.
Yeah, it doesn't age. It's a perfect way that we're ending our segment today. I'm so grateful that you came here today, Richard, to share your wonderful wisdom. Thank you so much for coming to Savvy Business Radio.
And thank you for having me.
Savvy Business Radio broadcasts worldwide via a large podcast network celebrating business owners, entrepreneurs, influencers, and successful individuals. Find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest. Call 732-474-7375 or email Christina@savvybusinessradio.com.